Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the monthly patron-only Zero Talk show. And today with me I have Matt from the Linux Cast. Hey Matt, how you doing?
Hello. It feels weird to
Uh,
be on this side of the podcast. I'm just saying.
yeah, usually It's the same. It's weird for me too. Usually I'm on your podcast. Now you're on mine, and it's the roles have flipped. The roles have flipped. Uh, but welcome to my show. This is a show where I do monthly for patrons, where I invite you guys uh, to have a chat, a Linux chat with, and it's nothing special. No prepared questions. Nothing. It's just Linux.
Cool.
uh, uh, there is, however, a question by someone we both know, Grandpa to you, Hippie Daddy to me. When are you gonna get rid of that glue on your door behind you?
It ain't coming off, man. Trust me, it ain't coming off. It needs to be repainted, but I'm just, haven't done it.
Yeah, but
I
that's
had
that's
I had an image, like a poster on there for the longest time, but it fell off because this double-sided tape wore off or something. Um, and then
yeah.
it won't hang back up. So I
And
don't.
since you and I are now Steam Deck pals, let's talk a little bit about the Steam Deck, shall we? Uh,
Sure.
what do you feel? How do you feel about it so far?
Well, I won't be making any more videos about it, that's for sure. That video flopped. Apparently my audience is just not interested at all in gaming, which is fine. But I I like the machine. I One of the reasons why I didn't buy it was because I've never been much of a gamer before, at least not recently, and I didn't think that the Steam Deck would change that, and it hasn't changed that.
Hmm.
I still liked playing it, but I'm a casual gamer. I'll go play for 5 minutes or something like that, and then go do whatever else I need to do, or get distracted by a book or something like that. It's just the way it's always been. That's the reason why mobile games have always been so good, because you can go in and play a level in a mobile game in 5 minutes while you're on the
Yeah.
can or something like that, and then move on. You know, whereas if you have a console, you have to sit down in front of the console. You always have to wait for it to update because it updates constantly. And then you can maybe eventually get to play the game. And if you're gonna sit in front of the console and play for a while, you expect to play for a while. It's just never been me. Now, I will say this, that the Steam Deck is perfect for casual gaming because of the resume and suspend functionality. Like, you
Oh
can
yeah.
just turn it
I
off and
must
turn it
agree.
back on and it restarts where you left off. That's so good. Um, I just wish the battery was better. Because if the battery was better, and I could, because there's gonna be a few days, where I just don't game at all because I'm just too busy. I got a job, I do run a channel and all this stuff. So there's a few days in between, and even when it's in standby mode, the battery's draining. So, like, it can be at 100% when I shut it off. When I go back to it the next time, a couple days later, it could be dead. I wish that wasn't the case. I wish it was more like the iPad, where when the iPad,
No.
turns off, or, I mean, when you just put it to sleep or whatever, you can let it sit there for like 10, 15 days or something like that on a charge. And it won't do it. And, like, the networking still works, so you can get some notifications and stuff like that on the iPad. On the Steam Deck, if you're downloading like a game from Steam and you turn the screen off, it stops downloading. Like, it turns off the
Oh
networks. Yeah, it
yeah.
turns off the
I
network.
noticed. I noticed that I was in the middle of installing a few packages like from Flatpak from FlatHub, uh, and then the screen went dark because the battery was at 43%. So the lower the battery, the sooner it goes to sleep.
Mhm.
Uh, I noticed that it disconnected from the network completely. It's like it says I found errors in terminal
Yeah,
because
it turns off the network stack when you turn it to sleep. Now, I've been told that if you're in desktop mode, there's a way to bypass that, so that Steam will continue to download in the background. But if you're in big picture mode, that it won't. I don't know if that's true or not. Somebody told me on
I,
Mastodon. So,
I will need that because my connection is so slow. If I want to download a big game, I will have to leave it overnight.
Well, what I've just been doing is I plug it into the charger and just leave it. I leave the screen on and everything. Now, I hate doing that because I feel like something
Yeah.
something's gonna go horribly wrong, like screen burning or something. I mean, it's not an OLED, but still, I don't like leaving the screen. One of the reasons why I've had so many problems with the desktop environments that I've been using lately is because the screen functionality just, doesn't want to put my
Mm.
screens to sleep, even though I did eventually fix it on Plasma. I don't like leaving my screens on when I'm not here. Like, or
Yeah,
that's why I like them to go to sleep.
don't do the mistake I did. I used to leave the screen on during overnight downloads. Sometimes the screensaver wouldn't kick in. X screensaver wouldn't kick in,
Mhm.
uh, and I forget to forget to turn off caffeine. Uh, Now I have burn-in. Now I have, or as they call it, image retention, because burn-in is permanent, whereas image retention, it causes the image to stay for like hours, and it will. I'll have to start a white screen, a blank white screen, or a dark black screen in order for the image to go away.
Mm. Hey, you were having some problems with your you said you had the opposite problem than I did with the monitors. They just go to sleep all the time for
They
you?
go to sleep all the time. Unless I turn on caffeine.
Try going into Plasma settings. I'm gonna have to do
K
this.
screen, K screen.
Yeah, kill the K screen to process and see if did that fix your problem?
Yeah,
Yeah, it fixed mine too. That's the exact issue that I was having. I killed that, and then all of a sudden, the power management settings, like they worked perfectly. Now
yeah,
I still had when I found that solution, that wasn't even what I was going to solve because when I first switched to Red Core, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of
no, no,
hijacking
it's okay.
your yeah.
It's okay.
When I first switched to Red Core and went to Plasma after using XFC for a while, every time my monitors tried to go to sleep, like they would always hit the threshold for going to sleep, and then they'd flash off and turn right back on, right? And
Yeah,
when they were doing that, when they came back after that flash, the primary monitor be switched, and all of the windows would be in different places from where I left them. So I googled that problem and found someone that said, "Hey, go disable K screen," and I did that. If fixed the problem where the screens wouldn't go to sleep. They went to sleep perfectly fine. It didn't so much fix the lack of the ability for them to remember what the primary monitor is. But I figured it out and I followed the bug on their bug tracker. Basically what it is, I have two different monitors, right? One of them is slower than the other to wake up. So
yeah,
when the one that's faster wakes up, it thinks that that's the only monitor that's plugged in, so it just assigns that as primary, and when the other one pops up, it's just a secondary monitor. So
yeah,
it doesn't remember the profiles. Now, XFC has the exact same problem, but XFC also has a setting to remember the profiles. Now, in 527, KDE implemented that solution
yeah.
to remember the display profiles. Unfortunately, Kwayne crashed this morning, and I didn't get a chance to test if it fixed the problem. So,
Well, I never had the issue where the screens would switch, because I have three different monitors, completely different. I have one that has a refresh rate of 75 hertz, one 144, the center one is 144, and the one next to it is 60. So completely different refresh rates. And the side monitors are 1080p. The center monitor is 1440p. It's an ROG Swift monitor, and I will never buy another Asus monitor as long as I live. They're crap. They're overpriced, and they don't live as long as those two $30 monitors that I have. But
so I'm gonna. T-
It doesn't switch. Never, ever.
hmm.
Maybe because I'm using my own custom KDE settings that I keep using in XeroLinux. I don't
Yeah.
know. But the sleep issue, when you mentioned K screen, I remembered that I saw the fix somewhere. I was like, yeah, I need to kill the K screen service. Uh, the monitors will not go to sleep, but in my case, now, because of the issue, the lack of power, I need to save power. I need them to go to sleep.
Yeah.
So I re-enabled it because, dude, I didn't know monitors can suck so much power. But
Yeah.
Yeah, the fix you mentioned is an actual thing. It's been an issue for the past 2 years. So
Oh, yeah, when I reported that bug, there are something like 200 or 300 bugs on their tracker just for K-Screen.
yeah,
It's like nuts. Like
it's
obviously
crazy.
you're a KD fanboy a little bit, right?
Simp.
And I want to be a KD fanboy. I've used it now I used it for a whole week. And when I was in 5.26, it was the best plasma experience I've had in years. It was very, very stable. And I was like, well, 5.27 is supposed to be like the last one for a while. So they're not going to introduce any like major bugs because of course not. I was so delusional. But man, just I,
Uh, oh,
Nico.
I will have you know that the first point release is coming next week.
At this point, I don't even care. Um, like I'm just done with it.
But
Um, I've made this point before. Nicolo actually made a video responding to me saying that they need to stop with the features and just focus
mm,
on bug fixes, right? And he said that they basically can't do it because then they'd have a whole backlog of
mm.
features and stuff like that, which I call a little bit of BS on, given the fact that they're actually doing what I told them to do now to get to 6. They actually put everything on hold to go to 6. It's like the last version, like so they can do it. Like, and many projects over the course of eternity have put pauses on features. It's called Ubuntu does it on every release. It's called a feature freeze. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Uh,
they should start implementing that, and they did actually. And Nicolo mentioned it in his video. He was like, "It's and he hesitated to call it a freeze. He used another word so that he doesn't call it the same thing as Ubuntu, but actually that's exactly what they did. But with the introduction of 527, now if you when I checked my network manager settings, there's a weird thing called low. LO. Somebody on my server said, "What is this LO?" I linked him to the Reddit thread, and then subsequently someone found a link to a bug report, and it says 5.27.1. So they're releasing a point release very soon. Uh, so much for the last version of five of Series 5. I talked to Nicolo behind the scenes. There will be at least two point releases before 6 comes out.
mm.
Uh, but
Just
even
I would love, and I've said this before, and I know it would be hard on them, but um, the Linux community is such that if you give them a task, usually, and point a whole bunch of people at them, at the task, usually it gets done, right?
yeah,
And also, people aren't dumb and unable to listen. So if the KDE organization said, "Hey, we're not going to take any feature requests for the next year, none whatsoever," fine, 6 months, whatever, it doesn't matter. Um, all we're going to take are bug fixes. Like everybody who's out there who has the ability to code and who contributes to KDE, instead of focusing on new features, what we're going to do is we're going to have this initiative stomp out the bugs. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
everyone just focuses on making KDE the most stable as it is right now. You don't have to take any features out, whatever. Just go fix and make sure everything as it is right now is completely as stable as possible, and it'd be good. And then for the next 6 years, go break it again. Well,
yeah.
whatever, and then do another freeze. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to happen every year. It's just you can't continually add features to your desktop environment and then expect things not to constantly
It's
go wrong and have so many bugs.
it's gonna become
Eventually,
like Garuda at some
well,
point.
it's going to become so untenable, like, right? You can't. Eventually, it's going to become to such a point where there's no way you could possibly keep up. And I think it's actually there. After taking a look at the case screen bug tracker, where there's 200 of them just for. I mean, that's. I mean, I'm. It's obviously a very important service that runs in the background. But if you can kill it and things keep working, obviously it's not that important.
Yeah,
Um, and and,
exactly.
and it has 200 bugs there. Now, I mean, obviously, some of those are going to be either worked
It's
on or
we
whatever.
went
But
from this bug existed since 5.20 since 5.20, and we're at 27, and it's still not fixed.
well, you can't. keep introducing features like that, and then continue, and then be able to expect to ever keep up with them. Because you just keep introducing new bugs every time you come up with new features, because I mean, and it's not even that the new features are buggy; it's that they interact with everything else.
Yeah, and
So,
I'm thinking since Steam uses the Steam Deck uses KDE, uh, but they're using backports, so older versions of KDE with their own patches.
plus, are they sticking to the LTS versions?
Yeah,
Yeah,
from what I read, yeah. And Nicolo mentioned one thing on one of his live streams. I hijacked his live stream and I asked him, "Okay, when will you introduce the ability to save our tiling layouts in your new tiling thing?" He was like, "I don't think it will happen." I was like, "What's the use if we can't save? Even Windows allows us to save."
yeah.
I'm like,
I
you
d-
introduce a
I
feature.
I didn't get a chance to try it out. I'm really upset about it.
Yeah, I tried it out. It's nice, but still Bismuth outdoes it by miles.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with KDE panel. Still Lattidoc outdoes it. So for me.
Yeah,
So
I didn't have a problem with the panels. It was fine. My biggest I just have so many hopes because Katie has so much potential, but it just can
it does. It does
every
have a.
single it just
It,
disappoints me every single time I use it. It's
it
just
depends. For me, it doesn't disappoint me as much as uh, it makes me rethink how much am I will I put up with, because I started by putting up with a couple of issues, then a handful of issues, then and it's growing and it's growing and it's growing. Now I have this weird issue that's happening that maybe it's hardware, but it's getting to a point where I'm I might consider another desktop environment to be my main, and seriously, and people might find it surprising, but I'm seriously considering switching to GNOME as my main.
mm. If I were to have to use KD Plasma as my daily, right, like they force me to, the LTS would be the way to go. Like
Yeah.
I would. There's absolutely no reason for anyone who wants a stable desktop environment to use anything that's not the LTS. Um,
Isn't
and
527 going to be the LTS?
I probably, but hopefully it's not the LTS yet because it is bugging. If you go to the KDE subreddit on Reddit, it's just one after another people saying, "Oh my goodness, there's problems." So,
There are. Yeah.
and then the weird thing is that Nate wrote in a blog post yesterday that this was the most successful KDE release ever, and it was very
No.
stable and stuff. Like I don't,
This is
maybe
marketing speak. This is marketing speak.
maybe a whole bunch of people are having a good experience with it, but I didn't, and I've seen so many people say they're having problems with it.
Well, not as
Um,
many problems as before, but let me tell you one thing I noticed since updating to 527. It is way smoother than it ever used to be. I don't know what they did under the hood, but now it's like everything is so snappy.
are you
Nothing bugs out.
using Wayland?
No,
Okay.
I
When
am
I,
anti Wayland.
when I am too. When I logged into Wayland this morning after Kaywin trapped the bed, um,
You do notice a lot of smoothness in
oh,
Wayland.
it was buttery smooth. Like, man, if only you know screen capture worked well in Wayland, I could actually see myself using it. But screen capture just doesn't work in Wayland.
It's
Just
it's really buggy. Even if you get it to work, it's buggy.
well,
Uh,
I mean, obviously, my lack of Pipewire was the biggest hurdle to me not screen capturing this morning. But even when Pipewire's there, it's still not automatic, right?
you have to do everything manually, configure everything manually, and
Well, I
add
mean,
strings to launch strings to
yeah,
application.
and you have to enable a environment variable, which means you have to
Yeah,
know what an environment variable is.
yeah,
That's not user friendly. Now, I understand that
true.
that's going to be OBS's fault, not Wayland's fault, right? That's just the way they've chosen to do it. But until that's automatic, like until OBS can launch and say, "Oh my goodness, I'm using Wayland. Let's be Wayland for a while." It's not going to be something that everybody can use. And the thing about OBS is that it's something everybody uses. Like everybody that I know uses Wayland or OBS, even if they don't, they're like not a YouTuber, like either they stream or something like everybody uses OBS that I talk
Doesn't
to.
doesn't the Steam Deck use Wayland?
Yes.
Yeah, and screen capture for some people works on that thing.
Well, I guarantee it's something that Valve did, not
Yeah,
something that OBS did.
I'm sure
Right?
it's something Valve did. Plus,
Yeah.
it's an AMD system, so
Yeah.
that's why I'm gonna be switching to AMD as soon as I can afford a GPU, because Nvidia issues have been the bane of my Linux usage.
Oh, the screen tearing is back.
Uh,
I forgot about the screen tearing.
you're
Aren't I?
on AMD, so you just need to configure a config file.
I know.
Add a.
I haven't didn't have a chance yet.
I know, I know, but
With Plasma, I didn't have to do it because I could just turn on full screen repaints and it just was fine. But you can't do that in i3. So
and on NVIDIA, you just open the NVIDIA thing and enable full screen compositing, what's it called? Pipeline, whatever, thingy majiggy. But I'm sick of NVIDIA. If I want to, if I am to continue using Linux, I need to move away from NVIDIA because with every driver, they introduce deal breaking issues. Deal breaking issues. Like
yeah,
now, when streaming, when I go live on YouTube, for some reason, the NVENC encoder just breaks. Just breaks. It's like somebody put a gun to its head and shot it. It's I have to restart the OBS and reconnect to the stream. What the viewers see is like a slight disconnection and it reconnects. But what I'm seeing is a complete system malfunction. It's like and Kwin and streaming. When it gets to a certain memory usage, it decides to crap the bed. It's natural with KDE. That's why I'm seriously considering using GNOME because GNOME and Wayland and NVIDIA specifically, it's becoming something usable. Because
mm,
I was able on Nobara GNOME edition, I logged into Wayland and it was buttery smooth. And and another small thing that people don't really pay attention to, it remembers every Windows position whenever you close an application. If you had it on screen 1 or screen 2, you close it, you open it, it reopens on that screen where it was last. On X11, forget that. That's why I had to use an extension that opens the app where the cursor is at. It follows the cursor.
yeah. I wish that setting worked in KDE because KDE has that settings too where it follows the cursor. Doesn't work half the time. For
True.
me at least.
Yeah.
Even though I have that setting set, sometimes the cursor can be here and the window pops up over there. And it's especially bad with Audacity. Audacity, it's like it lives to spite me because no matter what, it opens up on a different monitor. It doesn't matter. It's like wherever the mouse is, that's exactly where Audacity will not launch.
Yeah.
It's really
Well,
weird.
for me, it's Audacity. It messes up all my audio system, and I somehow transform into one of Chip and Dale. So ever since Zany introduced me to Ocean Audio, I have had no issues. I open it, I record on your podcast, no issues. Uh, but yeah, it's constant issues with KDE. It's like, come on, people, stop introducing issues. I need to stick to KDE because I swore I would never move from that desktop environment. I don't want to break my own promise and look like an idiot. Uh, but dude, GNOME, and there's a new extension on GNOME called VShell coming out. It's amazing. I wish KDE introduces those into their part of their system, not as an extension or anything. There's
What
so many cool extensions on GNOME. It's wonderful.
what does VShell do?
VShell, it used to be called vertical shell because you know how people when gnomes in I don't remember GTK 4 they introduced or 3 they introduced the horizontal workspaces on the top when you go into activities view
Mhm.
uh, from the vertical. Some people were like up in arms about that. They wanted the vertical back. So that developer created an extension that re-enables vertical
Mm.
vertical workspaces, but now it does even more. It allows you to move them from horizontal top, horizontal bottom, vertical left, vertical right, vertical left, and so on. And it's like an all-in-one encompassing extension that has way more features. You can enable animations, you can enable transitions, but it's not out yet. It's still on. He didn't release the extension yet. It's still vertical workspaces for now. The version should be updated to version 2.3.5 soon. But I tested it out from GitHub. You can install the latest version from GitHub if you git clone and make install. Uh, it's wonderful. It made me like activities again because me, from my point of view, when I see the app grid full screen, I'm like, am I using an iPad or am I using a desktop? Hide those things if I'm on my desktop. I don't want to see them. I hate them. And I enabled Arc menu, so it became kind of like KDE, like my KDE system. I was like, this is who I am. This is how I like my system. It's my distro. I do it the way I like it. If you
Mm.
like it, use it. You don't like it, you can modify it. You can change things. There are many users who use the deconf command that I showed on video to reset to vanilla GNOME, and then they went from there. It's just a command: deconf reset, deconf dash dash reset. But this extension alone made me like uh, the grid again, the app grid again, and workspaces again, and all that. It's an amazing. There extensions. There's this stigma around extensions that they break with every major, but it's natural. It's natural for it to break. The code changed. The code it's based on is updated. So
No. Okay, we're gonna have to fight on this one. Now
they
it's
have
not
to update. They have to update their extensions to work with the new code.
it's not universally true,
Not
but
universally, but
one of the reasons why extensions break all the time is because GNOME requires them to be version number dependent. So if
oh.
so the extensions are looking for a certain version of GNOME, and when GNOME updates to a new version, it doesn't find that version of GNOME anymore, therefore it breaks. Now, that's obviously, like I said, it's not 100% true, and I'm sure there's someone that's more of a developer than I will ever be out there that can tell exactly the reason why they all break all the time. But one of the big reasons why is because of that version number dependency that they look for.
All they have to do, all the developers of the extensions have to do is make it look for a newer number.
Right, but okay, so you deal with developers all the time, especially for things that are supposed to be things that are done, right? Just simple fixes that don't really require any maintenance. They want
Yeah.
to, they've created this thing, it does the features that they've always wanted it to do, and then it should just continue to work forever and ever. Now, obviously, that's not all projects, but a lot of them just are
Hmm.
really simple, never should have to be maintained. To ask a developer to every time GNOME updates to a new version to actually have to go in and update their thing, even if they don't use GNOME anymore, you know, it's
Yeah.
just asking to all it's asking to do is have an entire repository of extensions that are abandoned and nobody can use. You know,
Yeah.
that's exactly what you're asking for.
I can see how that can go wrong and why people would hate on that thing, but uh, like Dash to Dock and Blur My Shell, those are constantly updated. They
Yeah.
always work.
Well, yeah. Plus, those extensions are more than just one person, right? They have more contributors than
Yeah,
just
they're part.
one people.
I think they're part of the GNOME family, I guess, of
So,
developers.
so it's less likely that they're going to get abandoned, and also they're
Yeah,
always adding new features and being better and stuff. I'm talking about the things that are you just should
yeah.
never have to be updated. They should just work, right? And they don't.
I had one extension that I had to discontinue on zero G. Was I forgot the name of it, but it was a thing that allowed you to modify the quick settings menu, make it look good, and add a lot of toggles to it. But I talked to the developer, and the developer, you know what he told me? He was like, "None of the code is mine. All the code that this extension uses is from different extensions. I just unified them." So if it breaks, he has to wait on the other extension creators to update their code before he implements them in his, and and he abandoned it. He completely abandoned it. He hasn't updated it in months, uh, and yeah, I can see how it can get frustrating. It frustrated me because it was an awesome extension, but there are a handful of extensions that are always updated. Always, they see over 3, 4 updates a day.
Well,
Because I build the packages from the AUR, I know because I get notified every day that there's like caffeine received 20 updates in one day.
mm. Well, it's not surprising that the GNOME developers have a reputation for not liking extensions when everything breaks all the time. Like if you, it's I don't think that it's true, but it feels like when they do an update, they go out of their way to break extensions as much as possible. It's not true, but it feels like that because there's a reason why extensions have a reputation for breaking with every version because they do. I mean, it's not like I
Yeah,
said, it's not always, but they do. It happens so often that Pop decided, hey, we're not using GNOME anymore because we're sick of having to update these extensions every time GNOME updates. And it's not even as if Pop OS was using the latest version of GNOME; they were using an older version. So they're still having to deal with that turnover, and it's not something that a
yeah,
lot of developers want to have to deal with.
and since you're talking about the pop developers, they created the pop shell extension. Uh, that extension hasn't seen updates since December. Uh, and the only thing they're doing right now is to make it stay working on GNOME. They're just upping the version number. I'm checking the commits. They're just updating the version numbers and the
They're
dependencies.
well because they're writing it. Eventually, that's going to get rewritten in Rust because they're
Yeah,
rewriting their desktop environment in Rust.
it is. Oh,
And
now it is in Rust. Now
right,
it is in
it
Rust.
wouldn't surprise me if that eventually stops getting updated completely because they're no longer going to be using GNOME. Why would they
No, no.
continue
Now
to
it
make
Pop Shell is Rust. Now when I build it,
right
it
now?
uses
I know, but eventually, why would they continue to update the extension
the
when they no
extension. Well,
longer
yeah.
because they're not going to be using GNOME, so they won't be using GNOME extensions anymore. Why would they continue to maintain an extension that they're not going to be using?
When I'm building the extension from the AUR, because it is on the AUR, instead of downloading it from the GNOME extensions, I build them from the AUR so I can include them as packages and I keep maintaining them. Uh, it relies on uh, its dependency. Two of its dependencies are written in Rust. They while I'm building them, I see it's building via crates.io. So crates.io is a Rust engine.
Mhm.
So it's building using dependencies that use Rust. So it's eventually moving to Rust. Will they maintain the extent? The question is, will they keep maintaining the extension when it shifts completely to Rust, or are they gonna make it only work with Pop OS? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Uh, I mean, it's open source. Somebody else could pick it up, but I don't know if
Yeah,
they will.
and keep
Uh,
working on it via GTK
yeah.
and speaking of GTK, Libet Waita has caused me more pain and suffering than KDE with all its issues. Because when of the application gradients, you made a video about it, I think.
Mhm.
Uh, well, gradients doesn't work 100%. Because it's Libadvaita we're dealing with. We're not dealing with it's CSS code basically.
They really don't want you to customize that stuff. So when they make tweaks, a lot of times that application just gets
Hacks.
broken. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
hacks.
a hack. Um, though I read that Gradient is a little bit more well liked by the GNOME
It
developers than anything else, but still, they make so many changes to that kind of stuff, and it's never going to be a stable experience as long as
no,
the
because there's
the
one thing Gradius
changes are
doesn't
there.
do very well is accent colors. That's why
Yeah.
you have to use it in conjunction with accent colors extension. So
So okay, so here's the thing that I've always argued about GNOME. Ubuntu does the best GNOME. It just
yes,
does.
yeah,
They have accent colors. They do a better job of making sure that the dock is customizable. You can move the dock around. You can make it you can make it a panel. You can make it a dock, whatever. It just looks so much better than the vanilla version of GNOME ever has. Now I will give vanilla GNOME some credit. They did finally get rid of those ugly ass icons that they've used in the file
yeah.
picker forever. So kudos on them. I'm not sure that the blue that they chose is much better, but it is better than it was before. But Ubuntu's version of GNOME is just way more customizable. It for me, it's always felt more stable, and it just feels more like a usable operating system. I think one of the
Be-
reasons. So let's just look at the perspective of a new user. You open up, say, you install Fedora, and you open up the into your desktop environment for the first time. You get nothing, absolutely nothing on the screen. There's no icons, no place to check and stuff. And yes, they have a tour. But have you seen the GNOME tour?
yeah, I've seen it.
It's the most useless tour I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, why did you even bother? Those 3 pages tell the user absolutely nothing. And when you're presented with a user interface that has nothing obvious for you to do, how are you supposed to know what to do, right? So
The KDE
you
one, the new one, is better than Gnomes because you
oh
can click and open stuff.
miles and away. And with KDE, with the default version of KDE, it's very obvious what you can do because it's the Windows paradigm. It has a menu down there at the left-hand side. It has the task manager
Yeah,
or stuff at the right-hand side. It's very obvious. Everybody knows that UI. The GNOME one has nothing on the screen at the beginning, and in order to get to something, you either have to know to press the super key, which I mean, half the people don't even know what the super key is. I mean, if
yeah.
you've come from Windows, you've never used the Windows key. I mean,
No,
I mean, right?
uh,
Or you have to know that the activities button up at the top is actually a button, not just a word. Those are the
yeah.
two. If you don't go exploring for those things, you'll have no clue what to do unless you go looking for them, and
That's
that's just
what.
not good user
That's
experience.
why. That's why in Zero G, in the GNOME edition of XeroLinux, I opted to go menu style, where it's an icon in the top thing using my icon, the XeroLinux icon. It's users are gonna immediately. It's like intuition. They're gonna click on it, and it's gonna drop a menu. So I could put it at the bottom if people want it. I, can you put the GNOME panel at the bottom? Oh yeah, you can
You
via
can't.
decomp. Via decomp. Yeah,
No, well, I mean, you could do it probably via decomp, but you could also just do it via an extension. There's an extension for that. I'm not sure. I don't remember what it's called.
I might do that at some point, but the way I make my decisions for Zero Linux is I put myself in a new user's shoes, and I'm like, what do I expect from this desktop environment? People think like I release Zero Linux willy nilly like that. No, I put myself in their shoes, and I think, okay, what's the guy's first intuition? They know Zero Linux KDE edition. So they know the menu is up top. They've seen reviews. They know the menu is up top. So I'm going to have a menu instead of activities, the word, because the word, as you said, doesn't, by intuition, you're not going to click on a word and expect it to show the app grid.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I don't like the app grid, so I'm going to leave it at a menu. And the dock, I don't know why it's hidden by default on GNOME. It's like, okay, so the user, a new user who has never used GNOME, is expected to know that the dock is hidden in the activity view? No. That's why dash the dock is very important. Now, blur my shell, I just included it because a lot of users wanted it. I don't care for it. It adds more performance usage. It uses more performance because it has to render the blur and render all that. And for systems that are low end, it's gonna be heavy. Uh, but I started digging around for extensions that will help a new user get acquainted with GNOME. So uh, I selected only like 15 extensions, but those 15 extensions now we're up to 15, but I'm not adding any more because the more I add, the more headaches the user are gonna get next month when 44 gets released. Uh, so I need to I always am careful at to what I add and how I add it, and that's why my tool now being rewritten in a different language, thanks to a developer I met on Mastodon or Fostodon. He's been working on it for 3 months, and I'm not pressuring. I don't like to pressure anyone who decides to contribute to Zero Linux, but we're making the tool as beginner user friendly as possible. I even put paragraphs explaining every option on the page, like Chat GPT, for example. When you ask it a code, it doesn't only spit out the code; it explains everything underneath. So this is what I'm doing in my tool. I'm a user-friendly distro. Zero Linux is a user-friendly distro because I describe everything. It's better than any welcome screen you can better than any welcome screen in any desktop environment. So when this is what I don't see from distro maintainers. Every distro I see that comes out, either it's called user-friendly because it looks good, but it's never user-friendly because everything is explained. It's very rare when I see a distro where everything is explained and they put themselves in new user shoes. Nobara is an amazing distro, but it's not a new user friendly distro.
I don't
Not at all.
think it was meant. I don't think it was meant to be. I mean, it's okay. It's okay for a distribution not to be new user friendly. It's just you can't proclaim yourself as new user friendly and then not be. So a good example of this is Elementary OS. Elementary OS proclaims itself as a new user distro where you can come from Macintosh and be perfectly happy. And then they deliberately sabotage their App Store experience by not enabling FlatHub out of the box. You
Yeah.
know, that's not new
But
user friendly, right?
which brings me to the point, since we were talking about GNOME, uh, what do you think about the GNOME Software Center?
Depends on which version of it you're talking about. I don't
Like
I
uh,
think
in in general,
so.
like when you search for system tweaks, you will never find them on the GNOME Software Center. It's always via terminal.
Well, if because you have to you're talking about GNOME tweaks, right?
No, I'm talking system tweaks. Like if you want to look for Kwin plugins and Pipewire and or stuff packages like
Oh,
that, or
okay.
Bash
Yeah,
or terminal
that could
emulators and stuff like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, there's some true terminal emulators in there. Like you can, if you're on, depending on what distribution you're on, you can find Alacrity and stuff in the GNOME thing. But the stuff like that's not ever going to be included in the GNOME Software Center because they're focused on GUI
Yeah,
front ends to
like
stuff, and that's
the
just the
reason
way.
the reason I asked, sorry, but the reason I ask is because I included the no, GNOME Software Center in Zero G. My repos are enabled, the Arch repos are enabled, everything normal, FlatHub is enabled. You can only find GUI applications, but no, if I search for Alacrity, I can't find it. But if I included PAMAC, you will find it.
Yeah, it's just that's just that's the way it's always been, right? And it's the way
It's
it's always will be. Now, see, the thing is, I I don't know if I agree with it or not. It's just the way that it's always been, and it's fine. But the thing with GUI software managers is this: for the longest time, the GNOME Software Center was the best GUI file manager that there was, right? For a very very long time, because Discover was garbage. I mean, it was so bad. It was slow. It was buggy. It
it would
didn't look
crash.
good.
It would
The
crash.
it would crash. The app pages were like horrible. Like they didn't have pictures, they didn't have a description, none of that stuff. Like Discover for a very long time was the absolute worst part about Plasma you could use. Like it was bad. Like it was like I mean, I say a lot of things are garbage. That thing was garbage. So when you compare that to the GNOME Software Center, where they had images and they usually had a description, and a
But you
lot.
can't find everything
Well,
in
no,
the GNOME.
I understand. I didn't say it was perfect. I just said it was better. But in the last year and a half or so, Discover has cleaned up their act. Discover's way more stable. They completely redid the product, the app pages where they have images and uh security, and they have reviews and all this stuff, and it just looks filled out and really well put together. Discover's way better now than the GNOME Software Center in most cases, and one of the reasons why I think is because now there's like 6 forks of the GNOME Software Center. Everybody does it different. Ubuntu has the Snap Store. It's technically still GNOME software, but it's the Snap Store, right? Fedora has the GNOME Software Center. And you name the distro, they all do the GNOME Software Center a
But they
little
all
different.
apply different rules to it and
Yeah.
filter out different things. But here's the thing. I'm really now considering removing PAMAC from XeroLinux KDE edition and replacing it with Discover. Why? Not only because it's they cleaned up their act. I just because I never used Discover. I just saw people talking badly about it, so I decided without testing it, not using it. But I noticed it even updates Plasmoids and it
Oh,
updates
update
themes,
everything, and now that Flatpaks is fully integrated into Plasma, it'll update
permissions,
Flatpaks and
Flatpaks,
permissions.
permissions. It's
It updates everything. It's fantastic. Um, the
I'm gonna
uh,
switch to it.
the update situation on Arch for KDE based distros that use KDE is way better now that Discover's actually finally got it, because it used to be that you had a choice. If you were going to do an Arch distro, you'd be able to choose PAMAC, which is a Manjaro project, or you'd have to choose Octopi or Octopus or whatever the hell it is. And
Octopi, yeah.
that is the most confusing piece of software you'll ever confuse. It's not new user
Thank you.
friendly. It is
Thank you.
horrendous. To this day, I still don't know how to use it. And if I were to use, because I'm pretty sure that Manjaro KDE still comes with Octopi instead of PAMAC, which is dumb because PAMAC is there. But I understand the reason why. It's because Octopi is a Qt application, whereas PAMAC is GTK. So
No, but thank you for. I knew we were kindred spirits somewhere. The Octopi is so confusing. You have to select for installation, and you have to check the dependencies and check this and check
Mhm.
that. And it doesn't have a notification system. The notification system is a separate package,
Well,
and you have the choice between the Qt5 version and the Qt6 version. I'm like,
it's
come
like
on.
a much more confusing version of God, what is the I just had the name of the name the one for
Zipper,
no, the one
zip.
for Ubuntu, the one that's been around. It installs dev packages, starts with an S. Um,
Uh, Starts with an S.
yeah,
Yeah, it's the same as Octopi. I know what you're talking about. It's kind of like the Mint one a little bit.
Synaptic.
Synaptic package,
Package manager.
Synaptic package.
I
Yeah,
think that is just as confusing as Octopi, although it's a little bit less in that it at least doesn't confuse you with a whole bunch of different repositories and stuff like
yeah.
Octopi does.
No. But there's one question. I want to test. I want to test Discover before I completely move to it. Is would it look for tweaks like alacrity and fish and
Well,
let's say YTDL DLP now? Uh,
I don't know. I don't. I think terminals, yes. I think it will see Alacrity. I don't think it will see things like ZSH and Fish.
oh,
I don't think so. Um,
but here's the thing that is positive about it. You never see the cannot signature key issues mirror. You never see those in Discover, but in PAMAC, oh boy, it's a nightmare. PGP errors and PGP key errors, database errors, and
I
they
I can't I
haven't.
can't I can't really test it because I have the Discover right here. I was able to open it up even in i3, but on Red Core, all it does is look for Flatpaks. So
Oh no,
not helpful.
I need to test it on my end because I'm sick and tired of people sending me screenshots of PAMAC, PGP errors, key errors, database errors.
You can't rely on anything that's that's developed by the Manjaro team. You just can't.
The only reason I like Pamac, and it's only one reason, that it has a daemon running in the background. Whenever you double click a ZSD file, it opens up in Pamac and it installs it.
That's cool. Also, Pamac allows you to select multiple packages and then install them all at once, which is really nice. Not a lot of
Discover still doesn't have that.
no, it's just one at a time. The only other GUI front end that I know of for packages that does that is the Mate Boutique. Their boutique allows you to select
because it's
multiple packages
checkboxes.
and then
Yeah,
install.
because it's
So
checkboxes.
you just check the thing that you want and then go press install and install all of them.
That's what XeroLinux tool uses in the backend. Checkboxes, just like the Mate one. Check everything you need. Click install. It will install. It will pop up a terminal window instead of Pamac. We used to use Pamac backend, but it caused a lot of issues. So we decided to go. It was my idea to go back to terminal because I prefer to be transparent. Number one, with the user, see what's installing in front of their eyes. And it solved all the key issues and key errors because there's a command that runs prior to that in my script is update the mirrors, update the keys, then proceed to install. So
there's nothing worse than a welcome screen that tries to start installing stuff without updating the keys and the mirrors first. That's one of the. Don't get me wrong, I love Eric and I love Arco Linux a lot, but their separation of updating the mirrors and updating the system or installing the system drives me absolutely bonkers. Now I understand that it's a big honking button there at the beginning where it says, "Hey, update mirrors first," basically, right?
Yeah.
But people don't when they're installing stuff, they don't necessarily read everything that's on the screen. They just see the install button, say, "Oh, I want to install it. That's what I'm going to do." They don't assume that there's a step before that you should do.
Here's the thing: since I'm a student of Eric's, ex-student of Eric's, according to him, I have surpassed and I have graduated because he's a school. I don't know why he goes.
He's a professor. He's
a professor.
It's the Arch Linux University, man.
Yeah. So I did things similar to him. I have a button in my tool that updates mirrors, another button that updates the keys. But I also included as a step when you select all your packages. It will do those steps regardless if you click those buttons or not. Yeah. Because I know users are not going to click these buttons because they immediately want to install packages. And now we're going a step beyond. Our installer engine is an in-house created engine. So it's like a GUI package manager all on its own, created in-house for XeroLinux. So but I'm gonna replace Pamac with if it works the way I want it, I'm gonna include Discover because I like updating my plasmoids without having to rely on me updating the plasmoid, pushing the update to the Xero config and expecting users to apply that because the config stays in Scale until they run the Scale command. So I'm like, no, I'm not gonna expect, and maybe users modified their desktops the way they want. If they run Scale, it's going to replace their configuration with mine, the default one that comes out of the box. So I'm not going to force users to do that. So why not use Discover, which will update all the plasmoids they're using, and it's easier for new users. And it no longer crashes. It handles Flatpaks marvelously now. It has the permissions. Finally, we can get rid of, well, not really, but we can hide FlatSeal unless needed. And I checked. It's a separate file. It's called Flatpak-KCM. It's a separate file. It adds it to the settings, to the Plasma setting. I checked it. It's amazing. For some packages, it has the entire permission thing. For other packages, it only has the necessary things that you need to change. It doesn't show. Like, you know how in FlatSeal, when you open it, you have all the different options, identical for everything. So system bus, system files, whatever. It's all The
A
same
lot of stuff.
page for every
A lot of
application.
stuff that you don't want users to mess around with.
But Plasma did it better. Plasma, they only show you the necessary things to enable or disable for each application. The screen is not the same for every application. So, very well
Which one?
done.
We should talk about Flatpaks before we're done here. We've talked about this before, but we talked about how Flat Seal should be
Yeah.
default, but Flatpaks themselves are so freaking confusing because they're supposed to be this sandboxed thing, right? That's the goal of the thing is that they're supposed to be sandboxed, and then Flat Seal enables you to give access to from the app to the system so that it can have access to stuff. But some of them, depending on what Flatpak you install, already have access to the file system, and it's fine because you expect them, you kind of want them to. You'd probably have
Yeah.
to enable that setting anyways. But if they're supposed to be sandbox where the user has control over what the app has access to, but some of them already become pre-configured with access,
Yeah.
they desperately need a standard of what can and cannot be. Like either you're okay. Sandboxes only work if you're sandboxed, right? If you are,
Yeah.
you can't half-ass a sandbox and then call it a sandbox, because if once you open up a hole, it's no longer a sandbox.
It's gonna leak.
Yeah, it's like I mean, it's more like a pool metaphor. A pool metaphor would be working. Like if the pool's sealed, you know, the water stays in. If there's a hole in it, if it's gonna go away. It's just
And I agree 100%. A lot of Flatpaks come with pre-configured permissions, especially like OBS, for example. It already
mhm.
has access to your home.
Ca
Uh,
and it has access to the camera and
yeah,
the audio and stuff like
because with they don't they the thing of it is they're thinking about new users. New users want to launch it and use it.
from as a perpetual new user, I understand that having those things that you would expect to work makes sense. But then you can't call your thing sandboxed if
No, you
the
can't.
developer can have just random
That's
access to your
misleading.
machine.
That's a misleading label.
Beca So what they need to do is, instead of having flat seal, like I love flat seal, I love how KDE has done it, and I think both of those tools are good, and I'm glad they exist. But what needs to happen is that, just similar to when you download something on Android or iPhone, you have to give
Yeah,
something permission when it first opens. That's the way that it should be with Flatpaks. It should pop up
100.
when it first starts up. It should say, "Hey, this application would like access to your files. It would like access to your camera. It would like access to your microphone. Do you want to give it permissions to do this?" And then remember that those you've either given permission or not given permission, and then be done with it.
Once you give them permission, it should save those permissions into a config file that it
Yeah.
will. Yeah,
Um,
but
mobile apps have this down. It's done. Now, I understand building that system into the Linux ecosystem, where every distribution does things differently, is going to be hard.
yeah,
Um,
because they need to they need to either hook into the for KDE K notify to notify the user, or via a window K
Yeah,
notify window.
or build something themselves that's built with
Universal.
that's
That
flat
is
pack.
yeah.
Something that is actually tied into the Flatpak service that you have,
Or
that
use
you install, right?
XDG desktop for each
Yeah,
desktop environment.
there's many solutions for it, but it is going to be harder than what it is on mobile, because Google
Mo
comes up with a system and everybody codes for the Android system, and it's all just one thing, right? Yes, you have different versions, but they all run basically the same, right?
they're
Whereas
hooking into the same base system.
yeah, they all use the same notification system.
Mm.
Whereas with Linux, some people, every desktop environment has its own notification system and server. Some people don't use a notification server at all. Or maybe they use Dunst or something like that. So
Yeah,
everyone uses something different. Like, and that's going to be really hard. That's why it almost has to be something that the Flatpak guys come up with on their own. That's universal,
yeah,
that works
and
across
not
systems.
every, and we have to take into consideration that not every user is going to read everything that the terminal spits out. There's a case in point. when Grubtember happened, and they, instead of fixing it, they decided to push a small snippet text in terminal, which users did not read and ended up working their system. Nobody's gonna read that text. Nobody reads the website,
Well,
any website, before downloading
well,
anything, let alone terminal.
let's say they came up with a notification system that popped up when you open OBS or Discord or whatever. Let's just say they did that. Vast majority of people are just going to click through on yes on all the permissions. They do that on mobile. Like half the applications that you download on your Android or iPhone, you don't read what permissions that it says. You just want to use the application. And a lot of times it becomes annoying that everything pops up on your phone asking for permissions all the time. But that's the price you have to pay to call your thing a sandbox.
Yeah,
If your app's going to be a sandbox, it has to be a sandbox, and then there can be holes outside of it, but it has to be user granted permission. Otherwise, because especially like it's bad enough on like the Apple App Store where Apple reviews every single application and it's malware, quote unquote malware free, right? You know what I mean? But on FlatHub, nobody really reviews that stuff. Plus, you can have flat packs from outside of FlatHub. That's not the
yeah.
only source of flat packs. So anybody can create a flat pack. I could create a flat pack and put a Bitcoin miner in there, and maybe you wouldn't notice. And because me as I as a developer can go through and give myself access to every file that's on your system without ever having told you that I have access to that thing. That's just not well designed. And you can't. My biggest problem in the world, my biggest pet peeve ever, is misleading advertising. It's one of the reasons why I've been so frustrated with Redcore. Redcore, in the first sentence on their website, says this is based on Gen 2 testing. It is not based on Gen 2 testing. They have a branch that's based on Gen 2 testing, but that's not default. The one that you download from their ISO that was created in October is based on Deb or Gen 2 stable. Okay.
You want to talk about false advertising? There is an app that I found on a separate. I downloaded it as a Flatpak, but from GitHub. It's not on the Flat Hub. It's on GitHub. I downloaded it and I installed it. Guess what it was? It says Flatpak, and you double click and you install it. It installs an app image.
Oh, that's just mean.
Yeah.
That's like somebody saw me ranting about app images and decided to troll me.
It's like a Flatpak, but you double click to install it. You see it extracting an app image. Extracting app image, it says. I'm like, and you have to do it via terminal to see it. If you don't do it via terminal, it's gonna just install an app image without even you noticing, and you're gonna run it. It's like the app Fendi. What's it called? The Mastodon thing. I don't have it here. It's on my computer downstairs. But Fengi, the Mastodon instance, Rengi, the one you like, uh, uh, Rengi, Engi, the Mastodon client, the
I don't
desktop
remember. I
client.
don't remember. I stopped using. I remember liking one, but I stopped using it because it was
It was
not
an app
great.
image. It was an app image.
Oh, I
You
remember.
go to
Yeah. Sengi.
Sangi,
SENGUI. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I hated
You
that
go to
because
the
it was an app image.
AUR. I went to the AUR because I wanted to maybe host it on my repository, and I opened the PKG build because, as anyone should do, is read the PKG build before doing anything.
Hmm.
I opened the PKG build, first line, git wget app image.
Well, I asked. I got into their issue tracker on. Excuse me. On GitHub, and I asked them when they were going to be able to do a flat pack for their application. I remember this now. And the guy said that the reason why they don't have a flat pack version because they have everything else. They have
Mm.
Snap and there's like a Deb package or something. The reason why they don't do a flat pack is because of the compiler that they use to compile it into Electron doesn't support flat packs. That's the reason
Oh,
why.
and
Eh,
yeah. And
that's
speaking of,
just disappointing. But that's the reason why I don't use. I remember now because that's the reason why I don't use this because it's an app image, and the only app image that I have to use is pCloud, and I'm looking into alternatives. And once that's gone, I'm never using app images.
Same. And there's an application you also talked about, an instance for Mastodon. It's called Tocodon. It's a I didn't know it was a KDE one. It's a Qt based application, and they just updated and added the edit button. So
I think that that's an official KDE app. Like you know how you can, because
Nicolo mentioned it. Nicolo mentioned it.
yeah, because you can apply to the KDE Foundation or whatever it's called and ask for your app to become an official KDE app, and they'll host it on their website and everything. I think that Talkadon is an official KDE app. Like
It-
Ghostwriter just became one, and so I think that that's something that because they also have a Telegram. Do you use like they have a Telegram client
mm,
as well for QT?
yeah,
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it, but to end the episode, thank you for the chat. I'll see you later on the on the podcast.
Yep, a couple hours.
Couple of hours, I'll be on his podcast, so I'll be sorry, pointing the wrong direction. I'll be oh no, on Discord it's flipped. Okay, I mean on OBS it's flipped. But anyway, I'll be on his podcast in a couple hours, so it's the roles are gonna reverse. But to finish the episode, since we started it talking about the Steam Deck, I want to end it talking about the Steam Deck because I want to ask you a question. Put yourself in a new Steam Deck owner shoes, since we both are. What would you think if custom distros started appearing? Or I'm not talking about XeroLinux. I'm not gonna do it; it's too complex. But what do you think about custom distros for the deck?
It's a nerd's proposition, right?
We're
Only nerds
nerds
are right. Only nerds gonna care. For us, sure, cool.
doing things differently.
As long as as long as a system comes up where you can do it without having any risk of breaking the device, right? Like
Yeah.
if that system can get in, I'm sure they can because Valve has been so open with basically everything that I'm sure it's not tied
Even
down
their
anyways.
kernel source code is out there for
Yeah,
people to compile.
I'm sure that it can be done. So for nerds, sure. For regular users, I guarantee, I would bet all the money in my bank account that the vast majority of them never see the desktop version of what runs on the Steam Deck as it is, let alone ever
True.
want to install anything else. Because when if you're just a regular normie user, you see that the Steam Deck thing is a thing, you buy it. What do? You use it as a gaming console, and
Yeah.
it's that out of the box. You don't have
Yeah,
to make any changes.
but because the reason I'm asking is because Nobara has one
That doesn't
that
surprise me. Glorious
that
egg
run.
roll. That guy never sleeps.
Yeah, he
He
works
has so
on
many projects.
Proton GE, kernel patches. He's like a robot.
Nobara is like a huge project now. Um,
And you
he
are a
just
Fedora, Fedora fanboy. Nobara should be enticing to you.
so I know you want to end on this Steam Deck, but there's an interesting conversation to be had, and maybe I'll probably have it again closer to the time. But and I don't have an answer for this yet. Where I'm gonna go when this challenge is done, I don't know. That's the thing. I've thought about Arco because Arco has a Hyperland spin now, and I want to try Hyperland, and it's just easier to use Hyperland when it's pre-configured and everything for you, and I don't have to worry about anything. And Eric always does a fantastic job of making sure like OBS is guaranteed to work in his version of Hyperland, right? Like it's going to work. If you install it on Fedora, you got to do all this fiddly stuff to get OBS to work.
True, but speaking of Hyperland, my next guest next month, we're gonna record the episode sooner, but it'll be posted next month. It's going to be with Buxry, the creator of Hyperland. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'm gonna leave it at that. Thank you, Matt, as always. Kindred spirits. We agree on a lot of things. I'll see you, everyone. No, I'll see you. Sorry, on in a couple of hours on your podcast. With that being said, peace out. You're gonna find me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. but in the comments, let me know for the next episode what you want me to ask Bucks3. And since this is only for patrons, let me know via the comments on Patreon, of course, and spread the love. Anything you want to? Oh, yeah, and you can find. Am I pointing the correct way? Yeah. You can find him all over the interwebs. You can find him. He's got his own podcast at the Linux Cast. You can find him at the Linux Cast on Fostodon, at the Linux Cast everywhere. And you can find me at TechZero. TechZero is my original handle on Twitter. At TechZero on Fostodon, and you can find me on my Discord server and my YouTube channel at XeroLinux. With that being said, good evening, good morning, good evening, and good night. All right.